You look at the economy and you see nothing but traps. You analyze the stock market, you read the corporate earnings reports, and you spend months building the perfect, mathematically flawless model to protect your capital. You feel incredibly smart. But here is the clinical reality. While you spend 6 months agonizing over how to perfectly allocate your $10,000 savings account to avoid a 2% loss, someone with half your IQ just executed a simple, boring system and built a $5 million net worth. Your massive intellect is not a weapon. It is a biological shield for cowardice. In the next few minutes, we are going to completely dismantle the complexity trap. We are going to expose the dark psychology behind analysis paralysis and why intelligent people consistently outsmart themselves into absolute poverty. You will learn how your brain uses logic as a biological defense mechanism against taking real action. You will understand the toxic neurochemical dopamine hit you get from predicting failure. And you will see the exact, brutally simple architecture that the elite use to multiply their capital, while the smartest people in the room die paying off a 30-year mortgage. Stop analyzing the variables for a second and listen carefully. Your logic is financing your own cage. Society weaponized your intelligence against you. You have been conditioned since childhood to believe that making money is an intellectual exam. In the academic system, you were rewarded for being flawless. You were given an A+ for avoiding mistakes, memorizing complex data, and following the exact instructions provided by the authority figure. You learned that complexity equals value. You brought this exact same psychological framework into the financial markets, and it is mathematically destroying you. In the real world, wealth does not care about your grades. The market does not reward complex preparation. The market only rewards execution. But your highly intelligent brain refuses to accept this. To the high IQ individual, executing a simple, boring business model feels insulting. You look at a basic cash-flowing asset like a laundromat or a straightforward index fund, and your ego rejects it. It is not stimulating enough for your prefrontal cortex. You want to trade complex options, build a revolutionary tech startup, or time the macroeconomic cycles perfectly. You demand a sophisticated strategy to validate your intelligence. Complexity is where capital goes to rot. This obsession with optimization is a fatal biological glitch. You think you are being strategic, but you are actually exhibiting textbook loss aversion. Behavioral economics proves that the psychological pain of losing money is twice as intense as the joy of gaining it. For the intellectual, this fear is multiplied exponentially. You do not just fear losing the money. You fear the humiliation of being wrong. You are terrified that if you take a risk and fail, the tribe will look at you and realize you are not the genius you pretend to be. So, your brain protects your ego by triggering analysis paralysis. You convince yourself that you just need to read one more finance book. You need to wait for the election to be over. You need to wait for the Federal Reserve to adjust interest rates. You build massive spreadsheets tracking every possible negative outcome. You tell yourself you are simply practicing due diligence. You are not practicing due diligence. You are procrastinating. You are using preparation as a socially acceptable excuse to hide the fact that you are absolutely terrified to pull the trigger, the dopamine hit of predicting failure. You must understand what is actually happening in your neurochemistry when you overcomplicate your finances. When you look at an investment opportunity and successfully identify 3 logical reasons why it will fail, your brain rewards you. It releases a synthetic spike of dopamine. You feel a massive rush of superiority. You feel like the adult in the room who sees the danger everyone else is missing. But this dopamine is incredibly dangerous. It gives you the emotional reward of progress without requiring you to take any actual risk. You become addicted to finding the flaw. You become a chronic skeptic. And the corporate system absolutely loves a highly intelligent skeptic. The system needs you to be terrified of the open market. If you overanalyze every entrepreneurial opportunity until you talk yourself out of it, you have only one option left for survival. You must rent your massive intellect to a corporation. You must trade your finite hours on Earth for a safe, predictable, fixed ratio salary. Your intelligence makes you the perfect, obedient employee. You solve complex problems for your boss, generating millions of dollars in value for their equity, while you receive a fraction of a percent in the form of a paycheck. You use your elite logic to build their empire because you were too afraid to build your own. You have outsmarted yourself into a lifetime of corporate servitude. Perfection is the enemy of profit. Look at the elite. Look at the 1% who actually control generational wealth. They do not operate with chronic doubt. They operate with ruthless, imperfect execution. They understand a concept that shatters the intellectual's worldview, the concept of asymmetric risk. The overthinker looks at a venture and says, "There is a 60% chance this will fail. I will not do it." They walk away, preserving their ego but gaining absolutely nothing. The wealthy individual looks at the exact same venture and says, "There is a 60% chance this will fail." But if I'm in the 40% that succeeds, the payout is 10 times my initial investment. They accept the probability of failure because the upside is mathematically disproportionate to the downside. The elite fail constantly. They launch products that flop. They buy real estate deals that underperform. But their losses are strictly capped at their initial investment, while their potential upside is infinite. One massive asymmetric win wipes out 10 small failures and builds an empire. The overthinker never experiences the infinite upside because they refuse to step into the arena. They demand 100% certainty in a universe where certainty does not exist. You have a 100% success rate at doing absolutely nothing. The poverty loop of the perfect time. Let us examine the exact mathematical trap of trying to time your decisions perfectly. The intelligent planner watches the stock market. They look at the high valuations and their logic tells them a crash is imminent. They decide to hoard their cash and wait for the perfect entry point. The market goes up 15%. The intellectual feels anxious but doubles down, convinced a bubble is forming. The market climbs another 20%. Years pass. Finally, a correction happens. The market drops 12%. The overthinker feels a massive surge of validation. They scream, "I was right!" But they are completely blind to the clinical math. They missed out on 35% of compounded growth just to avoid a 12% drop. They won the intellectual argument, but they lost a massive amount of wealth. They would rather be right and poor than slightly wrong and rich. This is the ultimate tragedy of the high IQ individual. The ego demands validation. Wealth demands humility. You must accept that you cannot predict the future. You cannot eliminate all risk. The moment you demand total control over the outcome, you completely eliminate the opportunity. Compare the paralyzed intellectual to the foolish optimist. The optimist does not know all the macroeconomic variables. They do not understand the intricate details of monetary policy, but they take immediate action. They launch the ugly product. They buy the imperfect asset. They stumble. They make embarrassing mistakes and they look incredibly stupid, but they are gathering real-world data. They iterate in real time and eventually they strike gold. While the genius is sitting at home writing a 50-page thesis on why the economy is collapsing, the average guy who just executed a boring plan is buying his absolute freedom. How to murder your analysis paralysis. If you want to escape the middle-class trap, you must fundamentally reprogram your biological threat detection system. You must stop asking your brain, what happens if this fails? That question is a trap designed to trigger your anxiety. You must train your brain to ask a much darker, much more realistic question. What is the actual mathematical cost of doing nothing? The cost of doing nothing is not safety. The cost of doing nothing is guaranteed destruction. You are guaranteed to lose your purchasing power to silent inflation. You are guaranteed to remain dependent on a corporate hierarchy that views you as a replaceable line item. You are guaranteed to reach the end of your life realizing you traded your infinite potential for a fragile illusion of security. That is the real risk. You must learn to act with incomplete information. The elite make multi-million-dollar decisions with 60% of the data. If you wait until you have 95% of the data to feel safe, the opportunity is completely gone. The margins have already been squeezed out. The alpha has been entirely extracted by the people who moved faster than you. Speed of execution destroys chronic skepticism every single time. Decouple your ego from your intellect. This requires you to actively murder your ego. You have to be willing to look stupid. You have to be willing to lose money on a bad bet, admit that your thesis was wrong, and pivot without taking it personally. You must decouple your self-worth from your need to be intellectually superior to the people around you. Your intelligence is an incredibly powerful weapon, but right now, you have it pointed directly at your own head. You are overthinking your way into permanent poverty. Turn the weapon outward. Stop using your logic to find excuses and start using your logic to manage the downside while your courage captures the upside. Stop researching. Stop building the perfect spreadsheet. Stop waiting for the economic conditions to align perfectly. Allocate your capital. Build your boring systems. Accept the friction. If you want to understand the exact psychological frameworks that keep the masses paralyzed and the elite moving forward, hit the subscribe button. We do not deal in theory or academic debates. We deal in clinical, ruthless execution. The market does not care how high your IQ is. It only pays you for what you actually do. Stop outsmarting yourself. Start building sovereignty. See you in the next protocol.